Okay, I think we'll get started. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this ISM session on unpacking the curriculum and assessment review for music teachers in England. And thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning. We really, really appreciate your time, so thank you. My name is Ruth McPherson. I'm Head of Charities and Services at the ISM. And to describe myself for the purposes of accessibility, I'm a white woman with long brown hair and I'm wearing a grey polo neck jumper and I've got the green ISM logo up here behind me. I will shortly be introducing Deborah Annette, the ISM's CEO, to give an overview of this meeting before we listen to our guest speakers, Sally Bacon and Kevin Rogers. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms to discuss your views on music education and the curriculum. But before we begin, I just have a few things to note. Please do feel free to introduce yourself and let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat box. And if you wish to use them, subtitles are available to enable at the bottom of your screen. This session is being recorded so that we can gather your views anonymously and feed them back to the Department for Education. And we will be sharing a feedback survey with you afterwards, and we'd be very grateful if you would fill that out. And it's important to note that the ISM is also running at the moment an important music education survey to gather music teachers' views on the current state of music education in England and what we think needs to be done to support it in the future. So this survey is open to everyone working in school-based music education in England, and you don't need to be an ISM member to participate. So please do take part in that survey and share it with other music educators in your network. And I believe there's a link to that in the chat now. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to hand over to Deborah Annette, the ISM's Chief Executive, who will be introducing today's meeting. Thank you. Over to you, Deborah.
Thank you very, very much, Ruth, and thank you to everybody who has signed up to come and share your thoughts today with the ISM. It's just amazing that you're here, actually, 10 o'clock, Saturday morning, and joining the ISM to talk about music education. Actually, it's a really important meeting today. We've had extraordinary seismic events happening over the past couple of months in music education. As everybody knows, we had the outcome of the CAR review, which then led to the government's announcement in relation to scrapping the EBAC and having a look at Progress 8. We were told by the DFE that the Progress 8 consultation would be out before Christmas, but so far it hasn't appeared. So we are on tenterhooks waiting for that to come out. And that's why we really scheduled this event for the 17th of January, because we want to make sure that we have heard from music teachers what their thoughts are in relation to music education. In particular, looking at the Progress 8 issues, but also the curriculum, because we know that the curriculum is going to be reviewed and then rolled out to schools in September 2028. So what does that mean for the curriculum? There are big issues still out there in relation to teacher training, somewhat made more complicated by the government taking away the bursary for music education teacher training, which makes absolutely no sense, given that on the other hand, the government is saying how important the arts are. If the arts are important, then we need teachers. And somehow government sometimes forgets that teachers are the absolute crux of a good education. I myself did music at school. Obviously, I'm a bit older, so it was then just an entitlement. So I had a brilliant primary music teacher, Mrs. Roberts, who I still remember to this day, who did operettas. We did operettas at the age of 10. It was amazing. And then going on to secondary school, I was lucky enough to have another wonderful music teacher, Mrs. Setterfield, and music was just at the heart of that school. So I was really lucky. I went to state schools, and all the way through my education, I had access to brilliant music education. Now, we know that there is brilliant music education across maintained schools, but it is very hit and miss. And in some parts of the country, particularly where there is poverty, music education is very difficult to find or access. And that becomes even more the case as you go past GCSE into A level. And we held a meeting with our all party parliamentary group, which is parliamentarians who are focused on music education, 2 or 3 months ago, where we learnt that actually in places like the north of England, A-level music has virtually disappeared as an offering from our secondary schools, which is absolutely shocking. So there is an awful lot of work to be done. We know that the EBAC destroyed a lot of music education in our schools. It was absolutely shocking. We led the campaign in relation to scrapping the EBAC from 2010 on. And that was a very tough campaign because we could not get DFE to listen to us. So it's absolutely fantastic that finally, after 15 years campaigning, government has at last woken up and smelt the coffee and scrapped the EBAC. Along the way, we worked very closely with Sally Bacon, who is a wonderful campaigner in the field of arts education, making sure that everybody has access to a good arts education within our maintained schools. So I'm absolutely delighted that Sally is with us today, a really great campaigner and making a huge difference to children and our schools. The other person who we're going to hear from shortly is Kevin Rogers. Now, Kevin and I go back many, many years. When I first joined the ISM as CEO, he was an ISM board member. He's been a fantastic teacher to me around the pedagogy which underpins music education. Because although I did an awful lot of singing, I didn't know anything much about music education pedagogy. And I remember him doing a kind of crash course with me before I went off to meet Ofsted, which was incredibly beneficial. And he shared with me the 3 circles, which I'm sure are going to appear in his slides this morning. They are the crux of a good music education and really focus on musicality, which I think got somewhat lost in the EBAC. Now, of course, curriculum reviews can be very good and they can be less good. So we need to hear from you as to what needs to be in that curriculum. It's going to be a slow process, but we really need to hear from music teachers what should be in a music education curriculum. We're also going to be looking at primary schools because I'm not sure how many people, youngsters, have a Mrs. Roberts in their primary schools these days, which is tremendously sad. So we need to find out how we can, with the structure that we've got at the moment, improve access to music education within our primary schools. We're also going to be looking at Progress 8. Is it going to be the case that head teachers game the system? That is what I have heard is going to be possible unless we really do fundamentally overhaul Progress 8. And lastly, we're going to be thinking about the vexed question of teacher training. It's, as far as I can tell, it's a total mess. I think ever since the teacher training reforms came in, which got rid of many of our top places for training teachers within our university fabric, it's been all over the place in terms of teacher training and even more hit and miss. So again, if you don't have teachers being properly trained, and this is particularly true within primary schools, then how can you access it in the future? So lots and lots and lots to talk about, think about. Please, please, please do contribute during the breakout sessions. We are going to be collating everything you say, not just to share with DFE, but also because, and I'm going to see if I can make this work, I'm not sure if I can, because of updating our Music as Subject in Peril report, which came out in March 2022, which has been a very significant driver in relation to reform of music education. So we want to make sure that we've got all of your feedback and views so that we can feed that in to our next report on music education, which will be coming out this year. So a really important morning. So pleased you're all here. And I'm now going to introduce you to the wonderful Sally, who is going to hopefully just tell us where we all are now. Over to you, Sally.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Thanks for that lovely intro. Hello, everyone. I'm going to speak quite quickly. I've got quite a lot to say about the curriculum review, inevitably. I think it's fair to say we got more than we were expecting from the curriculum review and the government response to it. Both the review and the government response take time. I'll just take a moment to say they take time to examine existing blocks to progress and good outcomes. And some of these are quite breathtaking, really. It's hard not to see the review itself as damning about the EBAC and its impact on student choice. We're told that the EBAC has led to students being entered for GCSEs in which they are unlikely to perform well, and that this is disproportionately true for those from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. Wow. It's really, really striking and worth remembering. Next slide, please, Ella. The government response to the review accepts nearly all of the recommendations set out in the review itself, but goes further in some areas, most notably in proposing welcome consultation to reform Progress 8, as Deborah said, and in going much further in introducing an arts entitlement. We've really fought to have that. There's also more detail about enrichment. There's a much stronger emphasis on revitalising arts education in the government response. The government will publish a revised national curriculum in 2027 for first teaching in 2028, with updated GCSEs being ready for 2029. It's important to state that change is not going to be quick. As we state in the extended version of our blueprint, the CLA blueprint for an arts-rich education, the system change required is not a quick fix. It will take at least 2 parliaments to deliver. Next slide, please, Ella. Here are a quick set of headlines from the government response to the review, which sits within a really important context of closing equity gaps and removing barriers to access. I've had to cut the number of headlines down for what I'm going to say, so you've got some bonus headlines in the slides. Number one, we've got a commitment to a breadth of subjects, including art subjects, in accountability system changes with the loss of the EBAC. This was exactly, as Deborah said, what we'd all wanted, a genuinely broad and balanced curriculum and an accountability system which embraces the arts. Number two, we got a really strong emphasis on a guarantee to an arts-rich education. A commitment to art subjects as an entitlement is brilliant news and takes the review's ambition much further in spelling out this proposed revitalisation. The government is adopting the review's curriculum principles on breadth, representation and inclusion, so that's a big win. They want the curriculum to be both a mirror, they say, in which every child can see themselves and their communities reflected, and a window through which every child is connected to the world beyond their existing horizons and perspectives. It's a lovely sentence. We welcome the frequency with which knowledge and skills appear alongside each other in the government's response to the review. We're worried about it being over knowledge, too much of a focus on knowledge rich, and the acknowledgement that both are vital for children and young people. Knowledge and skills are actually presented in lockstep as a powerful partnership for learning, which is really good to see. We're really pleased to see the new emphasis on important capabilities such as critical thinking and oracy to prepare young people for life and careers in a rapidly changing world. We would argue that arts subjects have an important role to play here in developing these important capabilities as we set out in our CLA Arts Education Capabilities Framework. I'll show you that at the end. There's a point about core concepts, specificity and sequencing within and between subjects. There's acknowledgement that current programs of study for foundation subjects lack detail and that many could benefit from more specificity. As in the review, there's a welcome emphasis on progression from solid foundations and supporting transitions starting in the primary years all the way through schooling. There will be scope for curriculum adaptation for specialist, alternative and other education settings. Next slide, please, Ella. We're very pleased to see a real emphasis on teacher agency after years of over-centralised direction, although a challenge here is whether arts teachers will feel themselves to be appropriately trained, skilled, knowledgeable and confident to take full advantage of that autonomy. We know there is such a great deal of capacity building needed for arts subjects. And will there be enough trained arts teachers available, given the dramatic falls in arts teacher recruitment we highlight in our 2025 report card? As we know, there's been a complete cut, as Deborah mentioned, of the ITT bursary funding for music. There's a call for a rich Key Stage 3 to counter the current situation of there being years of so much content at Key Stage 4 that qualifications content has been bleeding down into this important key stage. And here we particularly like the recommendation to find ways to recognise and celebrate pupils' personal, social and academic achievements at Key Stage 3. That's quite a nice opportunity, we think. It's really good to see. We picked up in our analysis of the review that well-being was largely missing, bizarrely, apart from in relation to the burden of exams. So it was really good to see it referenced more by the government, and the recognition that areas of the curriculum beyond our SHE offer opportunities to practice strategies for mental well-being. Music, of course, provides excellent opportunities here. They're introducing an entitlement to enrichment within and beyond the statutory curriculum, funding support and a new set of benchmarks, including funding support and a new set of benchmarks. Ofsted will consider how schools are meeting enrichment expectations when judging the personal development grade. We're obviously really pleased to see arts and culture as being included as one of 5 enrichment areas, and to see the new enrichment framework being extended to further education. The review was big on all future thinking being evidence-based, but we haven't yet seen the same statement from government. Our sector is going to be very evidence-rich shortly when the CLA co-publishes rapid evidence reviews spanning almost 1,200 pieces of evidence across art subjects this year, including almost 300 for music, which we'll obviously share far and wide. They want schools to work together to support stretch and share best practice on what works well, and they want more partnerships. They don't specifically mention this the upcoming National Centre for Arts and Music Education here, but since one of its roles is to work to strengthen collaborations between schools and cultural organisations to ensure more children have access to creative activities, we assume the centre will play a key role here. There's lots of potential heavy lifting for the centre. Next slide, please, Ella. Thank you. So what did the review say specifically about music? Music gets by far the most coverage, actually, at around 4 pages. The other art subjects get around 2 each. The decline in GCSE take-up is acknowledged, and the Key Stage 4 decline is still evident, even allowing for an increase into the technical award in music. The stats addressed in our CLA annual report cards make for pretty grim reading, actually. The review finds that evidence of inequitable access to and success in music is substantial. Really troubling. 61% of schools with the highest proportion of disadvantaged students had no entries for GCSE music in 2024-25, compared to 10% with the lowest proportion of disadvantage. This is where the value of paid for out-of-classroom instrumental tuition is acknowledged, troublingly. It's noted that unless firm foundations have been built by the end of Key Stage 3, GCSE music becomes inaccessible to most students without extracurricular tuition. Really important acknowledgement of what's been wrong. As well as enabling progression to further study, there's also a specific mention of industry, with mention of facilitating progression to careers in the music industry. I don't think they made that about the other art subjects, actually. The review notes the Music Hub funding and welcomes the National Centre for Arts and Music Education, which will hold the Music Hub funding, but states that more needs to be done, especially to ensure reach. A recommendation is made that government should explore ways to optimise its investment in music education to support the teaching and learning and instruments and in the reading of music to give it equitable access to and progression in music education. Recommendations include revitalising the programmes of study for Key Stage 3 to give a rigorous foundation in musical understanding and enable access to Key Stage 4, and reviewing GCSE and technical award content to ensure distinct and clear purposes. There's also a recommendation that the government explores ways to optimise its investment in music education to support musical instrument tuition. The government response to the review's recommendations for music are interesting and highlight the inequity baked into the current curriculum. The new National Centre is going to have a lot of work to do alongside the reformed curriculum. So just to run through the points here. We like that the government highlights there's good quality music education, that good quality music education is a powerful tool for connection and expression. We think that's really good to see. The government welcomes the review's focus on equity in music education. It's really important, and they place an emphasis on supporting teachers, saying this is critical to improving quality and equity. And the programme of study will be reformed to clarify and exemplify its purpose, aims, and content, to ensure that pupils develop a strong foundation in the 3 pillars of musical understanding: technical, constructive, and expressive, including how to read music. Next slide, please. They set out the intention to create a clearer, more rigorous programme of study, critical to enabling pupils to continue their musical study, should they wish to. They'll review all Key Stage 4 music qualifications. They will consider whether current GCSE content and assessment could be better suited to the discipline, including enabling alternatives to instrumental performance using technology, voice, or both more effectively. And there's reference to the music hubs and the National Centre again. And I gather there was a bit of a debate about investment in instruments, which was one, I think. Anyway. A few final points here. Funding is going to be a really big issue. Inevitably, that was one of the main thrusts of a meeting we had with the new schools minister in November, and the government will be wanting to secure funding partnerships, particularly for enrichment work. The government does seem to be interested in looking at the role of artist educators as part of the arts education workforce in schools, and brokerage, connecting schools to cultural organisations, keeps coming up. We used to have structures for that. We don't anymore. So it's going to have to be reinvented. The really key thing for us now is an embedded entitlement to an arts-rich education, not delivered through a set of short-term initiatives, which a new government could easily scrap. We really do need that protected through legislation. And next slide, please. Key now will be delivering on this new ambition. And this slide here sets out why that matters. This is a capabilities framework CLA has developed over the last couple of years with various universities. This ambition is all going to take time and is now in the hands of DFE. We're revisiting currently our blueprint for an arts-rich education with colleagues and members to set out our arts workforce ambitions, and will involve ISM in that reimagining of our blueprint, and looking at the asks and underpinning principles that will be vital to deliver on the review's ambition for arts subjects. But the arts education erosion of the last 15 years won't be easily fixed, as I said. Once the workforce has been reduced and provision diminished, it's really hard to build back. And there are going to be immense challenges ahead. And stop sharing, please, Ella. So we've got everything to play for in this altered and significantly improved curriculum and assessment and accountability landscape. But our biggest threats may well be now losing a supportive government, PM and ministers before all of this is fully implemented. Therefore, it's incredibly important to build and protect a powerful and evidence-informed value narrative to support this genuine arts entitlement, and for us to come together now to support this new government arts education ambition in the interests of every child and young person. Thank you. Sorry, that was a very quick rattle through of the curriculum review.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sally. Thank you very much for that. That was really useful and informative, and will help kind of set the scene for our discussions. I'd now like to invite Kevin Rogers to present. Kevin, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Welcome everybody. So if I just share my slide, I hope you can all see that.
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you, Kevin.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Well, good morning and thank you everybody. Before we get on to the main part of this overview, I'd like to start by confirming that I think, obviously, that the removal of the back is a good thing. The message it sends about the relative importance of different subjects is very welcome. However, on its own, the removal will not make a significant difference to schools' music provision, unless there are also changes to schools' accountability measures, particularly around Progress 8. nor will it resolve issues around plan learning for curriculum music unless the current national curriculum is revised. Fortunately, we know that the government has accepted the review's advice that there should be consultations in both of these areas. Today is therefore a good opportunity to flag up and share thoughts on these key issues, as we really do need to engage with, and if necessary campaign on, any changes that are proposed later in the year. Progress 8 is being dealt with elsewhere today, so I'm going to focus on the issue of classroom music for the national curriculum, and then briefly on possible changes to GCSE exams, which the review has also expressed opinions about. In particular though, I'd like to explore some thoughts about the review's reference to musical understanding within the national curriculum, which may have taken some by surprise. As a reminder, this is what the review recommends that the government does. To clarify why musical understanding has been raised by the review, I want to start by describing curriculum music's place within the broader context of music education for all. This is because the complexity of music education's separate parts, and in particular the role that curriculum music plays within them, has confused many politicians, professional musicians and school leaders. The ISM therefore has a document which tries to clarify the issue. It outlines three interlinked areas that together make up a complete music education. These are curriculum music, instrumental learning and ensembles, and musical events and opportunities. Critically, it also describes the key learning and purpose for each area. Yes, there are overlaps, but the document says that the main purpose of curriculum music is to help all pupils develop their musical understanding, to understand how music works and therefore how music enables and conveys meaning. By contrast, it describes instrumental learning as being to help pupils learn how to play an instrument at advanced levels, and musical events being to help pupils learn about the joy and power of musical engagement. It's essential to grasp, therefore, that curriculum music is not primarily designed so that pupils can learn to play a musical instrument, even though that is an essential feature of the complete music education model. Rather, curriculum music is supposed to be about musical understanding, and it's been the intended function of classroom music for a very long time. In 1982, John Painter said, "The content of the music lesson should aim to develop musical understanding in all pupils." Since the 80s, successive guidance from national music bodies has urged us to focus on musical understanding. Indeed, the ISM has another document, which is a narrative exploration of that historical advice for musical understanding. By the time it references the situation in 2010, it confirms that national guidance provided this. Regrettably, and despite the consensus, the 2013 national curriculum completely ignored these ideas, so for over a decade the importance of musical understanding has become somewhat sidelined. That's why I said it might have come as a surprise. But the review's recommendation of its return as a focus for curriculum music is very welcome. Nevertheless, big questions remain for the government's review. My own view is that we need to focus on these issues. Number one, what does the review mean by musical understanding? Two, will the review's outcome provide a clear explanation of what progress through musical understanding looks and sounds like? And three, will musical understanding be described simply as a desired outcome, or is the essential defined focus of musical learning across the key stages? Taking each of these points in turn, what does the review mean by musical understanding? There is a clue with a clear reference to Ofsted's research review document from 2021, which describes these three pillars of progression for curriculum music, and says that together these pillars contribute to what could be described as musical understanding. Tellingly, perhaps, there's no definition of what is meant here by musical understanding, and I do think that while it's good that the principle is clear, the lack of detail is not entirely helpful. When talking about it, Ofsted has sometimes used the related term musicality, describing the importance of not just developing technical skills, but the need to use those skills in the classroom in order to improve musicality. However, I personally think of musicality as being different from musical understanding, and I suspect that using two terms for the same thing may just lead to confusion. So if we need to make sure that we all know what is intended by the term, what might an appropriate definition look like? In the past, it has been described generally as knowledge of music, rather than knowledge about or how to. But that's still quite vague. So for a more specific definition, we might consider the secondary strategies, Key Stage 3 music materials, which said that musical understanding can be described as the outcome of combining these two areas of learning. Since then, various other definitions have been made. We've already seen the ISM's broad and balanced document definition, and a fuller definition I worked on with teachers in one local authority said this. My own view is that we shall need a definition along these lines. That's partly so that teachers fully grasp what it is that their pupils need to develop, but it will also make it easier to define its progression across time, and that's critical. What does musical understanding look and sound like at Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 and at Key Stage 3? As with the basic definition, there have been various iterations of what progress in musical understanding might look like, all of them grounded in historical research and evidence. And I think this is really important. We don't need to reinvent the wheel when there's plenty of prior work to base the ideas on. For instance, in Ofsted's 2012 Music Subject Report, an example of strategic planning was provided stating this. It then shared a simple diagram which captured the essence of musical understanding across 6 benchmarks. Some of you may well recognise these first sentences of the old national curriculum levels, which in turn drew upon the research evidence of Swanwick and Tillman in their analysis of progress in children's learning through composing. Later, the Assessing Pupils Progress project provided a more detailed set of statements, highlighted here in yellow on the left, and also explicitly tied them in with the other key areas of musical learning. The Exemplification of Standards project also offered examples of what these key benchmarks sounded like in the real world of musical classrooms. This also helps us to see the option for our third key question. Should musical understanding be kept as a separate aim or be embedded with other musical learning? The initial ideas were to keep it separate perhaps, and the Ofsted model implies that approach. Since musical understanding is not itself one of the key pillars of progression, it is an aim to which the other learning contributes. However, I personally favour an approach like this APP chart used, where it is portrayed as part of all the key learning strands. And in my last local authority development work, we actually went for complete simplicity. Musical understanding is the key learning, seen here across the top row. And while there's also clearly music making and music thinking, the understanding is the essential learning priority. That provides absolute clarity, and I think we need to be checking for this when any new proposals to meet the review suggestions are published. Finally, a word about Key Stage 4. The review notes this. Note especially that idea of through within school provision. And then it says it recommends the government explores ways to Now, this combination of comments sets alarm bells ringing in my head, and I hope you can see why by now. I absolutely agree that all students should have the opportunity to learn to play a musical instrument. It's an essential part of the music education model I shared earlier. The review has correctly identified that there are huge issues of access to dedicated instrumental learning for many students, especially in areas of social disadvantage. They are also rightly identifying that this currently prevents some from accessing GCSE music because they don't have the practical skills that GCSE music currently demands. But we must be vigorous in opposing any suggestion that the solution to this is to make sure that all students learn to play an instrument in national curriculum music. Otherwise, we simply fall into the trap of confusing the different parts of that music education model. Yes, Students must explore music practically, and that requires the development of the technical skills needed to control sounds. But we must remember that curriculum music has never been intended to equip students with advanced instrumental skills. I'm not sure what the answer is to this issue, but changing the curriculum at Key Stages 1 to 3 so that all students have the practical skills at the end of Year 9 currently needed for a successful GCSE performance is not the answer. And finally, if you want to explore these principles further, do visit the ISM website where you can read the reports I've been talking about, as well as see and download all the historical documents that are associated with musical understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you to both Sally and Kevin for those presentations, which have given us a lot of food for thought